Okay, we're up and running. Good afternoon. Oh, come on. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right. So you guys all had some really good lunch, so I'm hoping now we have kind of at least an energetic session. It's not easy after lunch. But really, thank you all for coming. Again, we apologize for the delay. The keynote, on purpose, started a little bit late, allowed for some people to attend. So therefore, the whole schedule for the day shifted a little bit. So having said that, the title of this session is not, it will start at 2:15. The title of this session is all about essentially, integrating your data center into the cloud OS. And that's what I'd like to, talk to you guys about today. My name is Mark Chaban, and I'm part of the Middle East and Africa headquarters team, and I cover the 80 countries that we have in MEA. So really happy to be here. I do everything from kind of data center to public cloud, private cloud, and a lot of those components. I'm going to switch mics real quick. Very interactive, so I'd like to ask you guys some questions and hopefully we'll get some engagement from the audience. So first and foremost, I'd like to start with what you believe are the big four mega IT trends that are kind of, we're going to be expected in the next decade. So when you start thinking about those four mega IT trends, what do you mostly think about? What are the big trends that are coming in the next 10 years? Mobility, right? How many of you here have more than one device? At least more than one device, right? Okay, I know the rest of you are sleeping because there's no way. Every person I see walking around here has at least two devices, right? Whether it's an iPad or a Surface or an iPhone and a Nokia, etc. So mobility will be a really, really big deal and will continue to be even a bigger deal in the next 10 years. In fact, what we saw in 2012 was really interesting. Mobile devices started outselling PCs and out-revenuing PCs. So a lot of companies now are making more revenue off of a mobile device than they are from a PC. And as we continue to expand the mobility platform, more and more users are kind of embracing this idea of bring your own device, right? Bring your own BUI into the enterprise environment. So I think that on its own will create a lot of issues from a security perspective to a lot of enterprises. Okay? The second one is social, right? All of you here are doing some kind of Facebook, Twitter, Foursquare, you name it. But what's interesting is the biggest trend that we're seeing now is where social is going. A lot of enterprises that we talk to, in a lot of those cases, enterprises are now wanting to put in an enterprise social platform into their corporations. So for example, most of you have heard of the acquisition that Microsoft made with Yammer, right? Some of you have heard of Yammer? And the way now we're integrating Yammer into SharePoint, Exchange, and allowing the social experience to take place in a secure way, it's actually grown in a massive way. And what we're expecting to see here is a lot of the devices, a lot of the appliances that you're going to come to expect in the next decade will be very much social in nature, right? Number three is cloud computing, and this is where we'll spend a lot of our time together today. But in general, though, in 2012, over 80% of the new applications that were being developed by a lot of companies like yourselves, they were being developed now with the cloud in mind. Thinking about elasticity, thinking about, orchestration, thinking about all of those cloud dynamics, and trying to build those right into the application. So that's the third one. And last but not least, don't ever be confused around big data. That's the big mega trend that's coming. And big data is really interesting because if you think about it, all of the devices that we keep talking about, number one, all of the social things that we're talking about, all of the cloud apps that are being built, all of this is actually generating lots and lots of data, right? So, I'll kind of move out of the way here, but in general, 49% of the CIOs that we've surveyed have said, big data is on their mind. And they want to kind of tap into a lot of the applications that are being built, mobile applications, kind of, lightweight device-based applications, all want to tap into the analytics that I can actually benefit from the big data platform. So, I know Microsoft put a lot of work into these four elements, but I want you to realize that this is kind of what's happened in the industry. Maybe it's these big four megatrends that you're going to see a lot of technologies trying to support in the next 10 years. So now we're going to kind of dive into the cloud topic. And when you traditionally think about a data center and what goes into a data center, most of you think about data centers in this way, lots and lots of server racks. And as Microsoft continues to grow our worldwide kind of cloud scale, we've gone away from this model of building data centers in this way. And even in this way, when you think about the electrical, mechanical, the heating, computing, electrical, mechanical, security, a lot of the physical entities, generators, and so on, that go into a data center, when you build a brand new data center, we're trying to do away completely with a lot of this. Why? Because when you build a brand new data center, this is pretty much 70% of the costs go into the physical assets that actually built the data center. So traditionally, you think about a data center, you're thinking about the server racks that I showed in the earlier slide. But this is actually what goes into when you build a brand new data center. And I can promise you today, very consistent in Kuwait, like we see in many other countries in the Middle East, is that telco operators are building new data centers, government agencies are building new data centers, financial institutions are building new data centers. A lot of new data centers are being built. So we've gone away completely from this model, and we've gone to this massive worldwide computing scale. Right? Most of you have seen these containers, you've heard us talk about them in some of the open door events. How many servers do you think fit in one of these containers? Don't say it depends. 10,000 is pretty high, but a little bit lower. So depending on the workload, so what I want to show you is kind of the containers that you see in the middle are actually the containers that are stacked on top of each other in our Chicago data center, right? But on average, depending on the workload that we'll run, these will have 1,500 to 2,500 servers per container, physical servers, right? Now it's pretty amazing because when you think about the traditional data center builds that I showed you in the earlier few slides, we don't build data centers that way anymore. It's cheaper, easier, quicker, and more efficient to pull down a container of this size rather than trying to pull down this entire massive room or the entire massive warehouse of servers, right? More importantly, the efficiency gains in a data center environment will really determine how competitive you are. So for example, Microsoft R&D is actually taking some extreme concepts of even taking a container of this size, dropping a container in the bottom of a lake. Lakes are naturally cooled, and now I no longer have to worry about the heating and cooling aspects, right? And what we've done is, in fact, this is a data center that I'm showing here. It's Generation 3 data center. It's not even one of the latest, greatest data centers that we have. We've gone now to a Generation 4 data center where we actually completely depend on the natural elements to cool down the actual container itself. So fresh air cooling, in Kuwait at night, it's cold during this time. A lot of that fresh air cooling coming in can actually cool down the container so that we don't have to actually do forced air type of cooling. More importantly, if it gets too cold at night, we can recycle the heat coming out of the power supplies out of those servers, and then therefore kind of reheat the container back to a stable environment. But what you're seeing now when we talk about this cloud OS vision is that a lot of the learnings, a lot of the capability that we're trying to put into the public cloud, we're bringing directly to customers like yourselves. So these data centers that I showed you, this is essentially the data centers that we use to run the Microsoft.com footprint. Microsoft.com is one of the most popular websites in the world, right? More importantly, most of you have a Hotmail ID of some kind, you'll have a SkyDrive ID, and so on. And on the Hotmail infrastructure, most of you have a Hotmail ID, right? Can I get a show of hands? Okay? So if you think about the Hotmail environment, and you think about your data center and how much email you process on a daily basis, in Hotmail, we do about 3 to 4 billion emails a day. And in fact, now every Hotmail user has what we call access to a SkyDrive account, right? SkyDrive gives you 7 gigabytes of free space online, and that could grow up to 25 gigabytes of space online. Now, Think about the massive infrastructure environment that Microsoft has. So when we started building our first data center in 1989, and in the early 90s when Tomtail started becoming really, really popular, today you look at that footprint, and it's about 600 million users, right? And we're only looking at active usage. And when we say active usage, we look at what's the sent items that are being generated out of your inbox. That's how we know it's being actively used. You can maintain an account, if you're not using that account, you're getting spam mail, it doesn't really count as active usage, right? So this massive environment that's being built more and more over time has allowed us to transform our data center environment and our footprint worldwide and trying to kind of offload a lot of the investments that we would have to make from a hardware perspective and build it right into this OS. This OS that we talk about is the Cloud OS. This is basically Windows Server 2012. The entire Azure platform in the public cloud all runs this Cloud OS, which is basically Windows Server 2012. So what does the worldwide data center footprint environment look like? So wherever we have a primary data center, we have a fault-tolerant backup in a separate geography, electrical grid, legal jurisdiction, etc. And for example, we have Dublin and Amsterdam, and when you think about this, the primary and secondary, they serve MEA. But when you think about the Japan tsunami, when the Japan tsunami hit Japan, we've got data centers, in the east, the Japan, Hong Kong, and Singapore. What we've done in Azure is we quickly realized, with the software-designed data centers and software-designed networking, it was much cheaper for us to make 2 copies of the customer's data and store in 3 locations than actually buying more and more storage in one physical location. And a lot of that capability, that replication is built into Windows Server 2012. So we were able to take the Japan data center completely offline, and we had Singapore and Hong Kong completely up. Right? Just a great example of some of that capability that you can do directly into the software operating system. So as we move forward, a lot of customers today are saying, okay, you know what? I need to build a private cloud. No. Salesforce.com says, no, you need to do software as a service. But in general, you start to lose control and you want to maintain some sort of control depending on the security of that environment. When I go and talk to customers like yourselves about cloud, they tell me, oh no, you know what, I can never go to the cloud because of security, because of privacy, because of identity. This is the biggest inhibitor why customers don't move over to the right. And as you think about the main differences when it comes to cloud, when I actually have an on-premise environment and when I move them over to an infrastructure as a service, my entire focus now changes. I no longer want to worry about the networking, the servers, the storage layers. I want to actually worry more about the resource pool, which is basically the cloud. This is the private cloud and what we refer to as infrastructure as a service, right? And when you start moving over more and more to the right, you start now to move more and more to the public cloud, right? So when you think about the platform as a service, which basically Mohammed spent the morning part talking about, which is basically Azure, from a Microsoft perspective, now your worry is all about applications and data. How many of you have actually gone off to windowsazure.com? Okay, please make a note to go to windowsazure.com today, right? If you're thinking about building a private cloud and thinking about building cloud-ready applications, then immediately stop what you're doing and go and actually understand the way Azure is built. Because you need to understand how App Fabric works, how an application can now leverage a resource pool. And once you have those learnings, you can apply them then directly to your private cloud. Even if you were to go out and build fake applications, or even if you were to go out to actually leverage it for archival data or storage, use cases in the public cloud. Your focus here on the platform as a service is all about the applications and the data. When we talk about infinite capacity, when we talk about elastic computing, it's purely platform as a service, right? And don't be confused. There's not a lot of companies that actually play really well in this space. IBM, Lexicon, Oracle, etc. There's not a lot of companies that actually have a lot of this capability in the platform as a service space. And when you move all the way over to the right, this is something that most of you use on a day-to-day basis, software as a service. All of you have been using software as a service probably since the early 90s. Hotmail is a great example of software as a service, right? SkyDrive is another great example. For all of you that have a Hotmail ID, do you really believe that we actually went allocated for the 600 million users 7 gigabytes of space? No way. It's elastic, right? When you come and use it, it will be available for you. The application demands are available to service the customers. But most of you will not go out and use all 7 gigabytes. In fact, in the developed markets, we've had SkyDrive at 25 gigabytes of space. Why? Because bandwidth there is much better. But in general, 25 gigs per user is a lot of storage space. We don't go out and allocate that much, storage in our cloud environment. But on the software as a service space, most customers here are letting go of a lot of capability and saying, you know what, I just want to use the software, right? I want to basically pay for the usage of this software. So things like Office 365, things like Dynamics Online, even Google Apps, etc. This is all the software as a service space. So having said all of this, where do you think you'll be? Do you think you'll do private cloud? Do you think you'll do public cloud? Where do you think you'll be? Mostly private cloud? Can I get a show of hands?
Start with the operating system first.
Sure, start with the operating system first. But in general, we started this session talking about the 4 IT megatrends, right? And I said, cloud, and I said big data, and I said mobility, right, and social computing. So please be super, super clear. You're never going to make a clear cut to the public world. You're never going to stay in a super private. It's a hybrid world. You're going to be in a hybrid state for the next decade. Okay? So start designing your applications outside in. When I say outside in, go to Azure, design your application there, and then bring it in-house if you want to continue to have it on your private cloud. Right? So it will be really a hybrid state. Now, the next slide is really why should you care? So it's kind of interesting because a lot of you here are excellent IT professionals and want to understand what's happening in the industry and so on. And IBC actually projects that if you look on the left-hand side, that from now to 2015, the whole private cloud industry as a market, it's about $79 billion opportunity, right? That's hardware, software, services, training, you name it. So the industry is massively moving that way and investing in a really, really, really big way. So therefore, a lot of the elements that you saw me talk about when I started this session around the Microsoft capability in the public cloud, what we did with Windows Server 2012 in September is we released a lot of those learnings from the public cloud directly to customers like yourselves. So you can go out and build a lot of the elements of elasticity, automation, and so on directly to your private cloud. And because we did this, for a very long time, VMware had been, let's say, much sooner doing this with customers than Microsoft. Not only did we meet, but we're also exceeding a lot of the things that VMware typically does in the data centers in a really, really big way with Windows Server 2012. So, this is last year, and I still like to show this because I think it's become true in a big way. IBC predictions for 2012. If you look at number 3, it's kind of important. Well, I'll start with number 1. Customers will face a lot of confusing choices on virtualization, around, the cloud system software and so on. That's true. Private clouds will start to grow like gangbusters. Everybody wants to go out and build their own cloud first before they start leveraging the public cloud. And then number 3, this will be VMware's last year, this king of the hill. And this is especially true because we track through IDC, basically on a quarterly basis, the Hyper-V usage versus VMware ESX. And in the Kuwait market, it's almost 50% Hyper-V share. In the Saudi market, to give you an example, it's almost 56% Hyper-V share. Turkish market, we're at 45% Hyper-V share. So it's really impressive in terms of the massive Hyper-V growth that we're seeing now in a lot of customer enterprise environments, and then versus basically the VMware environment. And this is mostly due because enterprises now are saying, you know what, for best-of-breed applications like Exchange, SharePoint, Link, VDI, SQL, the Microsoft workloads that we've designed, those best run on a Hyper-V environment, and that's what we've architected them for. So we started seeing a big shift with customers saying, you know what, I feel like I can best run these workloads, these 5 workloads, better on a Hyper-V environment versus another environment. Now, second to this is, what we've got to say to customers is the roadmaps of releases of a lot of new software, like Exchange 2013, SharePoint 2013, a lot of those new solutions have been architected directly for Hyper-V. And if you look, when you survey the market worldwide, 70% of the worldwide virtualized workloads are Microsoft workloads. So hopefully, if you've had the chance to look at Windows Server 2012, you have the opportunity to say, you know what, maybe it's a good idea to move some of those Microsoft workloads to the latest version of Hyper-V. So, any partners in the room? Microsoft partners? Couple? Okay. I always like to show this slide because it's really important. When a lot of Microsoft partners come and engage to do engagements on the Hyper-V or the Microsoft Private Cloud platform, when we did a survey of all the projects, we found out that typically when Microsoft comes into a deal and we basically make $5,000 on a deal, Microsoft partners will come in and typically make at least 5 times more than what Microsoft will make, because of all the additional services capability that a partner can now have within a customer environment. And you know, as well as I do, it's all about relationships and trust. When a successful project is built into a customer environment, typically partners are trusted then to do additional more and more work, way beyond the virtualization platform. So we're doing a lot of work to make sure that we're also enabling partners to come in and deliver on those new implementations that customers like yourselves are asking for. So, what are some of those top hybrid cloud questions that we typically get from customers? Number one, how does Microsoft, what is the Microsoft private cloud? What do I need to change in my data center? Can I use both private cloud and public cloud? I get this question all the time, right? Is the cloud secure and compliant? Will the cloud take away my job? I really get these questions. I get these questions all the time. So I'm hoping kind of in some of the slides that are coming to basically try to explain and address some of these in terms of making sure that you guys feel comfortable around what things I would move to the public cloud, what things I would keep in the private cloud, how do I go about implementing the Microsoft private cloud, and so on. So, most importantly, it's always a journey, right? How many of you guys are actually seeing the infrastructure optimization models? No? Okay. So, Microsoft about 10 years ago started working with MIT School Sloan Business around how do we actually help customers like yourself move from a basic environment where it's not managed and so on to a dynamic environment, and allow you to kind of on this journey save incremental costs to make sure you deploy those systems. And what we've done on these I/O models, by the way, if you go to Microsoft.com/optimization, please write that down, and you're confused around where to start on your cloud journey, what we've done in these I/O models, infrastructure optimization models, is we basically have taken all of the industry terminology for how you implement a private cloud. So for example, do I want service management? Do I want workload relocation? Do I want scalability? Do I want elasticity? And we basically have updated these models to help customers like yourself start on the journey of saying, okay, you know what? I want to move from a physical environment to a virtual environment to a cloud environment to a hybrid cloud environment. And this is for me a great way to recommend to customers like yourself a blueprint around how to get started, right? Please take advantage of these optimization models so that way you can actually have a nice way, in a structured way, to move off the virtualization things that you're doing, the basics that you're doing, more to a cloud platform. Okay? So let's talk a little bit now about this Cloud OS. At the end of the day, most customers will actually now start leveraging, some capability in their data center and a lot of capability off of the service provider within the country. So for example, government entities here will not want data to leave the country, so they'll actually trust it with a local hoster. And we see this worldwide. So we see, on-premises clouds being built, service provider clouds being built, and then you always have, Microsoft in the public cloud or whatever vendor in the public cloud. And when we started thinking about, this Cloud OS in terms of where do we want customers to be enabled for the next decade, we said, whatever the customer puts in on this on-premise environment, we want to make sure that you're able to leverage this in the public cloud. We want to make sure that you're able to leverage this even with a service provider. So we saw this as one single design point. One single design point built on the foundation of identity and security. When you go out to leverage anything from the public cloud, whether it's Microsoft or a local service provider here in the country, all we do is we take your Active Directory environments and we federate that to the public cloud. So you're not getting a new ID and a new password. You're not getting new certificates. You're not getting new encryption processes. It's whatever you've done in your environment, we extend it out to the public cloud. So this concept of federation takes shape in a really, really, really big way. Okay? Now, if you look at some of the implementations that you get from Amazon, Google, Zebra, whatever the case may be, there's a lot of inconsistency in terms of the identity and security platform around how do I enable single sign-on from my private cloud to the new IDs and passwords that I'm getting from the public cloud. Right? So federation is a key one. And then the second one really is all about the virtualization layer. If I want to go out to Azure today, and I want to roll up a bunch of virtual machines, whether it's a virtual machine that's a Red Hat virtual machine, a Linux, or even a Windows Server virtual machine. And as soon as this virtual machine needs to talk to sensitive data, I want to be able to grab the virtual machine through System Center and move it down to my private cloud. So we allow you to do that. You can move VMs back and forth without having to be stuck in the public cloud or vice versa in the private cloud. So most of you are familiar then, with some of the cloud attributes, right? A lot of customers that I talk to have done virtualization. They've done either VMware or Microsoft. And what we typically find is they'll say, well, this is a cloud. And that's not really a cloud. That's a start to a cloud. So when I want to kind of move off of a virtualization environment, when I start looking at differences, number one, it's all about pooled resources. In fact, these two go really, really well together: pooled resources and elasticity. Why? Because now my resource pool is all I manage, right? I'm no longer worrying about the network, the storage, the compute power. I'm just worrying about this, resource pool that's basically allowing me to be elastic. So when users come in and request different services, like the SkyDrive example I gave, all of you are not going to get up and request 7 gigabytes of data, but therefore it's a pooled resource that's elastic, that's allowing you to request 7 gigs, but he'll probably request 1 gig. And the same thing applies in your private cloud. So on the left-hand side, those go really well together. And on the right-hand side, it's all about self-services and usage-based. I want to allow users, just like I do in Azure, to come in and request any services that they want. And I want to do chargeback or showback on what they're actually using in the cloud environment. And the way a lot of these are enabled is when I start saying, okay, my pooled resources is basically my compute, storage, and network. My elasticity, right? My environment being able to allow users to request more memory, less memory, more storage, whatever the case may be. Self-services, usage-based automation, how all of these come together. And a lot of customers then ask us, well, you know what? Why did you change System Center, right? You changed System Center from being these individual components now of a family. Because you couldn't actually go out and enable a cloud in your data center with all of the separate components being purchased separately, not really working well together. So therefore, if you're having System Center in your data center, what ends up happening is the System Center components represent a lot of these different solutions that you see on this slide. And they work really well inherently together to help you build out a cloud environment in your data center. So for example, Service Manager talks really closely now to Operations Manager, right? Virtual Machine Manager is talking to Operations Manager, and so on. They really allow me to have full orchestration of a cloud environment. So I said hybrid cloud for the next decade, right? And really when you start thinking about some of the things, that were talked about in the morning, how many people attended the Azure session this morning? Okay, perfect. So you probably saw some of this, but in general, when you think about Office 365, Azure, Dynamics CRM Online, any of the key pieces that you have in the public cloud, the foundation that we established for that really all starts with Active Directory. So Active Directory in the data center now allows me to have my environment federated to the public cloud. So I can have any tokens that I need passed on to the public cloud. And you can take control on this from your private cloud. There's this new service in Azure that we have, it's called WAD, Windows Azure Active Directory. Windows Azure Active Directory actually syncs locally with whatever you have in your private cloud. So now there's a full federation sync between private and public, right? The second one is the virtualization layer. As I mentioned, when an environment's built on Hyper-V with Windows Server 2012, I can move virtual machines back and forth, right? And the third is the management piece. And this is really critical because what ends up happening is developers will go and turn on virtual machines and actually build applications in the public cloud. But what if those applications in the public cloud now need to talk to a secure database? And I don't want to put that secure database in the public cloud. So I can host an application in the public cloud that have my database in the private cloud here inside of Kuwait. So all the application hits come to the public cloud, but all the data is being sent encrypted to the private cloud. And most importantly here on the management perspective, if the application starts to die, if the application is having issues, I open up System Center from my data center, and I can get application insights around what's happening in the application, even though the application is in the public cloud. Right? And last but not least is really the development platform. As you develop applications using .NET, PHP, Java, Ruby, Python, whatever the case may be, if I want to be able to continue development on this application locally, we have DRM consistency with Visual Studio that allows me to grab the application and continue to do development locally. Right? So fully hybrid today, based on your needs, based on when you're ready. So, and this journey really all starts with Windows Server 2012, System Center 2012. This is the foundation platform that allows you to start consuming public cloud. So just a quick history. I always like to show this slide because customers can then see kind of like a systematic update to a lot of the server platform. So as you've seen, kind of like from the Windows NT timeframe all the way to 2012, what we've done is we've always released incremental updates from a management perspective to complement the operating system. And the biggest update from a management perspective that we did was really around 2010 with Windows Server 2008 R2. But we quickly realized as customers want to go out and build a cloud, they can no longer kind of have these be individual components, but really be like a tight area of the two, System Center and Windows Server with the latest releases, right? When I say to you guys Cloud OS, I'm really talking about these two individual kind of, System Center and Windows Server 2012 working tightly together to deliver that basis of a Cloud OS that allows me now to start consuming things that are hybrid. And when you think about kind of like, delivering on innovation from a modern data center perspective, the biggest change that we saw is from a year ago when we released System Center 2012, it was all about making sure that we allow customers to do the orchestration, the automation, the chargeback capability. But it was only up until recently, as of last month, that we truly allowed customers to have multi-tenancy and the ability to have a full hybrid cloud capability. Which means Service Pack 1 now allows me to actually manage on-premise virtual machines and Azure-based virtual machines. Service Pack 1 also allows me to do hybrid cloud enablement of Windows Server. So I can have Windows Server Azure services installed on Windows Server at my data center. And as soon as I build an app, I can grab it with System Center and move it to the public cloud. And I don't know if most of you know this, but this big recent kind of release just happened a month ago, and that was basically System Center SP1. So System Center SP1 really kind of enabled a lot of things on the left-hand side to come alive as of last month. Okay? So please make sure that if you're thinking about marrying these two capabilities together, that you leverage System Center SP1 to really kind of tightly manage the Windows Server environment as well as the Azure-based environment in the public cloud. So top investment themes for Windows Server and System Center. One of the key things that customers ask me, they're like, okay, great, now you've released Windows Server, now you've released System Center, what's next, right? And I wanted to share with you kind of like, the top investment themes. It's not going to change. It's still very, very much about an elastic infrastructure. So whatever you build into your data center, we want to make sure that's going to be elastic into the public cloud. That'll be a key theme for us that you're going to see us continue to build upon. Number two is next generation IT. This proliferation of bring your own device, compiled together with social computing, the two big megatrends that you saw me talk about earlier. You're going to see us do a big focus on improving what we have today to continue to allow you to manage what's next kind of software plus devices plus services. Insight automation, I don't think that'll ever change anymore. It's all about getting deep application insight. That'll always be the way Microsoft will provide you management. But again, automation is going to be a big deal to automate systems from a Microsoft environment to a Linux and a Unix environment. So heterogeneous is a big investment from Microsoft. You're going to see us spend a lot more effort on the non-Microsoft systems from a management perspective. Flexible and consistent application platform. Going open source, right? So Azure today provides you some open source capability. We're going to continue to expand on that. Way beyond, Java, PHP, Python, Ruby, Linux, Red Hat. You're going to see a lot more capability in the public cloud from an Azure perspective that's going to allow you to have a lot more platform openness and consistency. And last but not least is people-enabled centric IT. At the end of the day, people want this to work and they want it to be very, very easy. So these concepts of single sign-on, the federation, the bring your own device, we want to make it very, very easy to allow you to kind of consistently expand what you typically do in the enterprise, to allow the consumerization of IT to successfully flow into your organization as you want to allow it to happen. So I'm excited for Kuwait because there's a big cloud pipeline that started earlier last year, or actually June of last year, so it's almost been a year. So everything that you've seen here on the left-hand side has basically shipped into Kuwait from a services perspective. So Windows Azure is available in the country, Office 365 is available in the country, Intune's coming next into the country, and then Dynamics CRM is also coming into the country. But the reason why I'm saying this is because all of these services are now available in Kuwait. And the way I actually go out and build a hybrid environment, I start with these two kind of platforms, System Center and the server, and I can then start basically consuming and using the things I feel most comfortable with from the public cloud all the way down to the private cloud. So it's a great opportunity today. If you haven't actually signed up for a trial account for Windows Azure, please go and do that today, right? And start kind of building your cloud outside from the public cloud into your data center. So most customers say, okay, I'm excited. How do I go and build a private cloud? How do I go get started? So Microsoft has spent a lot of work with a lot of the different vendors that you see up here, but specifically with HP, we went into what we call an infrastructure applications investment. And this frontline partnership was all about basically doing joint R&D with Hewlett Packard to deliver a reference architecture in a hardware design that we call Fast Track that allows the customer to stop doing R&D yourself, but basically take the networking, the storage, the servers, all tightly coupled with the operating system and management, delivered to you in a Fast Track configuration. So one single kind of server environment. And specifically on HP, we've decided for this session to spend a little bit extra time. And with that, I want to invite my colleague from HP, Ziad, to come on stage and talk to you a little bit about the HP Fast Track configuration.
Thank you very much, Mark. I think Mark did a very good job of explaining some of the key benefits of going to a private cloud and some of the key market trends. So one thing that I noticed Mark spoke about a lot is the hybrid cloud. In terms of having a vision for the hybrid cloud, as you see here on this graph, this is where Microsoft and HP are going jointly. So the newest announcement that we have is the HP Converged Cloud with System Center. Basically what that is a hybrid cloud configuration, scaling up from what we already have today. So we're not getting rid of what we have already today, we're scaling up. So if you look on the very left, we have a reference architecture for what we call a departmental private cloud, so a smaller version of a private cloud. Basically, it's a start for someone who's looking to virtualize, maybe do some extra management capabilities, but not to the level of orchestration and those types of things. And basically, you can scale up from one to another. So that's what HP and Microsoft are all about, being an open company with open standards. We don't try to lock you into one thing and then try to make you upgrade to a completely different thing. We like to take things in steps. And as you can see, this isn't a journey with a specific destination. This is a journey that or a roadmap that's going to continue moving forward. So this just gives you an idea of one of the solutions that we have to offer today. This is something that we've actually sold a lot of in this region. This is a turnkey appliance from HP and Microsoft jointly. It's called the Virtual System 3, or the VS3 from HP and Microsoft. Basically what it is in a nutshell is HP hardware, servers, storage, networking, combined with the private cloud stack, software stack from Microsoft. Also, HP's software integration from Insight Control is integrated very tightly with the Microsoft System Center as well. So this is something that's, for a customer that's looking for a quick time to market solution, something that's maybe a turnkey solution if you don't have the expertise of building something, or you don't have the time to wait and you're just looking to jump right into the private cloud, this is a great way to go. Basically HP's main go-to solution is the matrix. Our cloud is built around the matrix. So when you talk about matrix with HP, this is what it consists of. The most important part of the matrix is actually the HP Blade system. So how many of you have an HP Blade system today? Okay, so we have a couple. I'm hoping there's a few more, but in terms of market share in Blades, HP is by far number one worldwide, and even in the Gulf region, we have about 45% market share in terms of Blades. The next best is IBM, and they're around 20-something%, so they're not even half as much as what we are in terms of market share in Blades. So basically, Built on top of our blades is our networking gear, along with our inside software to help you manage that hardware and automate the different things together. And basically what it is a single pane of glass to where you can manage the entire solution, not only the blade or the storage or networking. So the one key thing to recognize here is that, yes, we do have storage, and we have a great storage offering. You know, we can talk about it more offline, but our solution manages other vendor storage as well. We're the only company that offers a fully manageable software that fully manages other vendor storage. So if you have an existing investment with EMC, NetApp, you know, whoever it may be, you can plug in the HP Blade System Matrix, you know, put on top of that the Microsoft Cloud Stack, and make use of your existing investments. So that's the key thing with HP. You know, we want to make use of your existing investments to help you move to the private cloud. And you know, we're partnering with Microsoft very closely to do that. Yes, we have other partnerships, you know, with other companies, but to be completely honest, Microsoft is our biggest partner, not only in this region but worldwide, and not only in the private cloud. We also have other offerings, and I think, you know, the next session will give you a better idea of some of the other solutions that we have. So I think, Mark, I don't know if you want to do some questions or.
Thank you. So how do we close on the session? Thank you very much, Ziad. We've done the most work with HP, as I mentioned. We do have a continued investment into R&D, making sure that, as a slide showed, that we continue to help customers like yourself do that. But most importantly, you know, your strategic next actions as I come to close. Number one is this: please partner with our local teams, with our partners on some of these initiatives, and on specifically something called private cloud immersion. Private cloud immersion is basically taking all of our experience and learnings of the biggest engagements that we've done, and we allow you to come into the innovation center that we have here in Kuwait, and you get to see, let's say you want to do elasticity, you want to do orchestration, you want to do automation, you get to see some of these different design elements of a cloud here, kind of to your liking in a POC environment inside of Kuwait. So please kind of partner with our local teams to do that. We have some more information on private cloud immersion on the sheets over here on the right. Number two, start small, don't boil the ocean. And I really mean that. If you're building a private cloud and you're not, you know, kind of looking at the applications, the way applications should be built inside of Azure, to take those learnings, you're making a really big mistake. Because what we find is customers will go out and build a private cloud, and then they'll actually forget about the applications now need to transform to those cloud elements that they built the cloud for. So does the application really do elasticity and resource pooling and so on? Typically they don't. So in parallel, make sure that, you know, when you're starting small, go start learning Azure, windowsazure.com, start understanding how to build applications in the public space, and then bring that learning down to your private cloud. Think about people and processes. I mentioned to you the infrastructure optimization, Microsoft.com/optimization. Look at those models. That's a great way from a blueprint perspective around how to get started, how to make sure that you include the right processes to really kind of match your ITIL standards or whatever standards that you have inside of your environment. And then look at the governance the same way you did for the web. This is, I mean, you want to kind of approach this the same way you've approached the web before. A lot of the things that we're doing from when we talk to you about megatrends or we talk to you about these I/O models in terms of optimization, we're trying to make sure that you have governance towards cloud like you did when you looked at the web. So this is it from my side in terms of strategic next actions. I'd like to thank you very much for coming to this session, and right now at this point we'll open it up for questions and answers, please. Any questions? Yes.
We did a study with one of my clients, and they were trying to go to a cloud environment. And one of the products we did look at was Microsoft. So one of the challenges we faced was we already have, our own. We have 10,000 plus users in our own Active Directory, our own SharePoint, our own infrastructure setup.
Yes.
Now, if we have to go even public, we already have an existing setup. We don't want to create another ID of the same user again in the cloud. And you just said like a month ago, you have this thing where you don't have to replicate. So are you saying that if I have to move to a public cloud or even a hybrid environment, now I don't have to change anything?
Okay.
Can you speak a little bit?
Yes. So I'm just going to repeat part of the question because it's an excellent question, just so that way everybody understands. So big environment internally, they've got the SharePoint, Exchange, let's say Active Directory, and now they want to basically expand out to the public cloud. So how do you make sure that we're not going in and duplicating a lot of the efforts that were done locally? Correct? Should I kind of summarize that good? So we had previous to Windows Server 2012 release, there wasn't a tight federation to the public cloud in terms of identities, in terms of your Active Directory ID and password. And you start with that foundational element. So if you're today in this scenario that the gentleman described, and you're not running Windows Server 2012 Active Directory, it would be difficult for you to federate to the public cloud. You would need that as your basic directory service before you start doing anything in the public cloud. That's step number one. Number two, then all the new releases of the latest versions of Exchange, SharePoint, SQL have been hybrid enabled, for lack of a better word. So which means is, if I have a SharePoint 2013 installation in my data center, I can offload some users to the public cloud or some portals to the public cloud, or even I can take, he said 10,000 users, I can take 5,000 Exchange users and move those guys out to the public cloud without having to do duplication, even their mailboxes, and do completely tight federation between public and private. Right? Now the only catch here is we only just did this with the latest versions of those solutions. So you would need Windows Server 2012. Now he mentioned SP1, like I said like a month ago. What I was referring there to is, I was referring specifically to managing resources, applications, and virtual machines. Right? And what I was saying there specifically on SP1, we allow our customers to take a virtual machine, build it out there in the public cloud, that if this virtual machine becomes sensitive in nature or they have worries about data privacy, through that management platform, System Center SP1, I can see that virtual machine, grab it, and move it down locally with all of its attributes, the database attribute, the App Fabric attributes, all of those things, so that way there's consistency all the way down to the private cloud. So it's kind of like a two-part answer. Answer number one is yes, you can do the federation if you have Windows Server 2012 and the latest versions of the IW platform, which is Exchange, SharePoint, Link, as well as SQL. And then the second one is if it's resources and virtual machines and so on, as of SP1, now you can manage both hybrid, public and private. And maybe one third one to add is now multi-tenancy. So we allow you to do full multi-tenancy support in your private cloud if you wanted it to with SP1. Okay? So I think it's overall good news from where we were in terms of allowing customers to have this full flexibility to be hybrid. Okay?
Guys, we're a little short of time, so you're welcome to ask Mark any questions just following the session. A little quick note, you have forms with you for the Microsoft Private Cloud Immersion. If your organization is interested in seeing that demo, you have certain scenarios in mind, fill in that sheet. We will get back to you and arrange for a time for your organization to have that demo. It'll be available early March, so make sure you get your turn on board. For partners, if you're interested to get your hands on the content, please reach Khalid, your PAM, your partner account manager, or Hiba, or Aladdin, and make sure you get the right documentation to get access to the private cloud version content. All right? Or you're welcome to reach me today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So there's another session that just started, but I'm happy to stay here to answer more questions from anybody. Okay. Looks like they don't want to leave, but I mean, so I can stay and ask and take more questions.
I love the passion, it's just the speakers are here. Okay, we'll take one more. We'll take one more.
As you know, that there's a VMware is already in the market for the past few years, and it's already situated in the market, and a lot of us already invested. Do you think it is very much easy for us that we already have a private cloud and instead of a VMware, how to migrate business because when talking to not our solution and how to migrate my VMware cloud?
Yes. So another great question. So I would say this is the elephant in the room question. So he said, we've already had VMware, we've already invested in VMware. What do you recommend for me at this point? And I love this question because it's a great question that we get all the time. Your VMware investments are fine. Like you made the VMware investment, I understand. I would just say to you that, what we've done from a management perspective, we manage multiple hypervisors, right? VMware doesn't. So we'll manage your Citrix VM, your VMware VM, or the Microsoft Hyper-V. So no issues from a management perspective. I would then just guide you to say, on all the next generation workloads that are being released, like I mentioned to the gentleman earlier, Exchange, SharePoint, Link, SQL, VDI, all of those have been designed specifically to run best in class from best practices and reference architecture for Hyper-V today and for every version in the future. I promise you that VMware is not involved in this process. They have no idea what the next release looks like. So I would say to you, if you have VMware, then move everything that's Microsoft off of the VMware environment to Hyper-V because that's what it was built for. And we have all of the best practices and the reference architecture to help you do that. If it's an Oracle SAP environment, leave it on VMware. You've already made the investment. But if it's a Microsoft workload, which is basically 70% of the worldwide workloads, I think you're doing yourself a disservice by leaving it on VMware because they have no idea around all the new versions that we're releasing. They have no idea what the architecture looks like. They can't do application lead insight on those applications, nothing, right? So, I would say best of breed for your environment. Best of breed would be applications with Microsoft running on Hyper-V. Not applications if you have them on VMware, fine, no problem, keep them. But we can still manage our environment because we manage multiple hypervisors, right? Does that answer your question? Great, thank you.